Hey everyone, welcome to this masterclass where today I will reveal the exclusive secret for working smarter in your law practice so that stuff gets done much faster, way easier, and with a lot less stress. And in case you're wondering who I am Ernie Svensson. This is a picture of me and some bullet points about my background as a speaker and so forth. But the main thing you need to know is that for the past decade or so, I have dedicated myself to helping solo lawyers and small firm lawyers create enjoyable practices where they are able to work less, earn more, and take more time off. So we're going to be discussing how to work smarter by using systems and by leveraging technology, because using systems and technology in sensible and strategic ways is what enables you to earn more, work less, and take more time off, which are things that most lawyers want to be able to do. Now, this masterclass is focused specifically on solo and small firm attorneys. So if that's you, you're in the right place. Of course, it's also helpful if you're looking to start a solo or small firm practice sometime soon. Now, as I'll explain in a second, I am a firm believer that small firms are way better than big firms. But obviously, there are challenges to running a solo or small firm practice. And I'm guessing that you will have experienced many of these challenges already, and perhaps that's why you decided to attend this masterclass. So I started a solo practice in 2006 after having been with a big firm for 18 years. So I experienced the challenges of a solo practice directly and could compare it to having a large firm practice. But for the past decade or so, I've been helping solo and small firm lawyers, by the hundreds, and asking them about their challenges. And after having done that a lot, I can say that there are some common challenges I keep hearing about. So it's statements like these are what I hear, like feeling like they're stretched too thin, like their overhead is too high, like they're doing too many things, like they need more systems, like they need to delegate better. And so basically, the lawyers that I talk to, these solo and small firm lawyers, feel a lot of frustration and overwhelm in terms of managing their practices. Now, sadly, too many lawyers feel this way. And a lot of them feel like, well, that's just the way it has to be. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, it does not have to be that way. I know for a fact that there are lots of lawyers in solo and small firm practices who have transformed their practices in amazing ways. And you can do this too. So just imagine if you could get more work done more easily without having to pay people to do the work for you. Well, that's the power of automation. Or imagine if you did want to hire people, being able to hire folks who are adept at working virtually, and you don't need to provide them with expensive office space or even a computer, right? All of this is possible, and it's part of the key to building a thriving practice, which is one where you feel a lot of bliss, because instead of having to do tedious drudgery, you can now focus on the high-level stuff in your practice, right? The things that really move the needle, things that give you a sense of purpose and accomplishment. So at this point, you're probably asking, okay, well, how does that happen exactly? And to answer that question in a fully meaningful way, it will make sense for me to tell you my story, which is the story about learning the keys to working smarter and not harder, but more importantly, it's an explanation of how to break out of the rut of a less efficient, more frustrating way of practicing. So my story will help you understand what to do if you want to make your practice easier to manage, and it will also help you understand what not to do. So anyway, my story officially begins back in 1985, which is the year I graduated from law school. And that's when I spent 2 years clerking for a well-respected federal trial judge here in New Orleans. And the lesson in how to work smarter for me began on day one, because the judge didn't welcome me to chambers. He didn't offer any pleasantries. He was on the bench trying a case, and he expected me to hit the ground running without any guidance on his part. Now, that would have been an unreasonable expectation, except that he had this thing which he called the Bible. It was a 40-page document that detailed all of the responsibilities of his two clerks. Now, it took him about 3 years to create this Bible, but after he had created it, it paid huge dividends for him year after year. The Bible was one part of his overall system for working smarter, a system that allowed his chambers to run smoothly with almost zero effort on his part. Using systems, freed up a lot of his time. So unlike other judges, he never came in on weekends, he took lots of vacation time, and yet, compared to the other judges, he had the lowest number of cases on his docket. So the other judges in the Eastern District were envious because they were working harder, and they couldn't figure out how he managed to get so much done so quickly. And that's because they didn't appreciate the power of systems. Now, a lot of people have trouble appreciating the power of systems, especially lawyers in big firms, as I soon found out. So after my clerkship, I went to work for a big firm in downtown New Orleans, and it was, it was very exhilarating. I was paid twice as much. I was given a lavish 40th floor office that overlooked the city. And I was assigned an amazing secretary who drafted my correspondence, prepared pleadings, organized files, made copies, and even brought me coffee. The firm had other great resources like a state-of-the-art library, expensive word processing computers, an office supply room with free legal pads, pens, staplers, binders, folders, and even briefcases if you wanted them. You just go in and pick them up and take them, and didn't have to tell anybody. There was even a lunchroom with a full kitchen where you could get full popcorn and sodas anytime that you wanted. So my first day at the firm was dramatically different from when I started working for the judge. Like, the partners treated me to lunch at a snazzy downtown restaurant. They gave me a $2,000 check, which was a starting bonus with the idea that I would use it to get a whole new wardrobe. So yeah, all that stuff was great. And my first day there was, completely different than my clerkship. But there was one more difference, and that was that no one explained what I was going to be doing to earn all of this money I was being paid. There was no written manual, no Bible, and apparently I was expected to figure things out on my own. And this really hit home when a partner told me I was being assigned to take a deposition in a big case. And I mentioned that this would be my first deposition. And since, it was an important witness, I asked if he had any recommendations for how to take the deposition. And he just looked at me for a second and he said, "Ask lots of questions." And then he turned and walked away. So yeah, I figured out how to take depositions, and I figured out a bunch of other things. But along the way, I noticed that no one really cared how long it took me to figure out things. Now, obviously, that was because the firm billed for my time. So basically, it was the clients who were paying me to figure things out. Now, I don't want to be misleading. The lawyers in my firm were very good at practicing law, right? So I learned a lot just by watching them and, observing what they did. So that was, a privilege to be able to do that. But while they were good at practicing law, they were horrible at other things. Like, for example, anything related to managing their business. Now, this ineptitude wasn't a big problem back in the 1980s when all big firms were making money hand over fist, doing things like sending lots of extra people to depositions, even if that wasn't necessary, and charging clients for that, or charging the clients 25 cents a page just for making copies. But later on, when the economy started tanking and clients started getting picky about their bills, lack of management skills became a problem. Clients wanted their work done efficiently, but the partners couldn't figure out how to do this. They had no instinct for efficiency, right? They had been essentially conditioned to work stupider and not smarter. Meanwhile, I was using computers to do a lot more of my work because I realized computers could do a lot of the work that humans did, but 10, 20, or even 100 times faster. And the computers did that work perfectly, like every time. So computers were amazing, but you did have to take time to figure out how to use them properly. So that's what I was working on. And one example was I discovered a powerful database software called CaseMap that enabled me to manage my cases with less reliance on associates or paralegals. I also learned how to scan documents and dispense with paper, which then completely eliminated the need for secretaries and paralegals to manage my documents, because I could organize these documents faster, better, cheaper, just by using my computer. I could find any document I needed in seconds just by typing in search terms and letting the computer locate what I was looking for. So having this new system made me much more confident. It also made me a more formidable adversary in trial because I was super organized and could find things really quickly. So I shared this discovery with my partners, and I said, I figured they'd be eager to learn. Unfortunately, I was wrong, right? They just thought I was weird, and they completely ignored me, which made me feel somewhat dismayed and maybe slightly humiliated, but that didn't stop me from continuing to obsess about how to use technology better. And the more that I did this, the more I realized something, which was the lawyers in my firm were stubborn, and they were lumbering traditionalists who had no idea how to meet the challenges of running a modern firm, right? They had no systems, they had no strategy, they had no clue about how to manage a firm or make meaningful improvements. And when technology started creeping into the practice of law more, they were especially clueless, right? So they would hire a bunch of tech guys, or they hired a series of tech guys who would sit in the server room, but they had no idea what this person was supposed to be doing exactly. So these people would do whatever they wanted to. And one of them spent all of their time there in the server room running a porn site, which we discovered when they let him go, or when he quit, because he was making more money running a porn site than he was working at the firm. The firm refused to pay for high-speed internet access, even though we had transitioned to the point where we were using it more for legal research. And the reason for refusing to pay for it was like, well, it costs 3 times more than what dial-up costs. It was an insignificant cost, but the effect was that all of the online legal research done by everybody in the firm was now being done at a snail's pace, right? Because it took longer to pull up the cases and everything was just, really slow. which of course I guess helped our billable hours. But that was just, it was ludicrous. So there were a lot of things like this with, the firm's mismanagement. Now, when the economy turned bad, as I mentioned, clients started getting pickier about the bills and the firm's profitability started declining. So the management committee hired a consulting firm to help them figure out how to deal with this. And, basically the consultant pointed out all the ways that the firm was misspending money, misallocating resources, and just generally making bad decisions. Like, for example, hiring people only if they were on law review and not hiring people who were just below law review but exhibited tremendous skill at getting clients and all kinds of other stuff. So they hired these law review people, which I happen to be one, but many of these folks were prima donnas who were more trouble than they were worth. So that was one thing. Then also letting lawyers who had power do a lot of things just because they had power. That bred resentment, caused the good lawyers in the firm who were able to go out and start their own firms to do that. So they depleted their talent pool. They paid an extra $70,000 a year to maintain Southern Reporters and other books that we were getting essentially by using our flat rate Westlaw online subscription, which allowed us to print out as many cases as we wanted to. So why would we get the books? Well, because there was a partner, an older partner, who liked to visit the library occasionally and he wanted to see the books. So they just kept them around for that reason. Another one was they started a newsletter for the clients. And lawyers spent hundreds of hours working on this newsletter for 3 years. And then after 3 years, we were going to survey the clients to find out how they liked the newsletter. And it turned out none of them had ever gotten the newsletter because it had never been mailed out. Nobody ever knew this because the supply room manager wasn't actually managed. And they had been stacked up next to the freight elevator. And we discovered this when the supply room manager quit or got fired, I forget. So there's a lot of problems. And then the other one that is an example of this kind of thing of spending too much money was we had WordPerfect installed on all the computers even after 80% of the folks had started using Word because it came with the computers we bought for free. And we did this because there was a junior partner who worked for a powerful partner who insisted on having WordPerfect on everybody's computers because she was afraid that the firm would transition away from WordPerfect. And this was her thinly veiled attempt to accomplish this, and they let her do it because they didn't want her to get upset. She wouldn't have left. She just would have got upset. So the consultants figured this out quickly. And they said, you guys are wasting money in a lot of ridiculous ways. They wrote a lengthy report, delivered it to the management committee. The management committee read the report, said, okay, it's time to do some cost cutting. But then when they announced the cuts, everyone was shocked because the first thing they started with was the free popcorn, as though that was going to make a difference. But then, they killed the staff's year-end bonuses, which demoralized the staff, and then they turned, with the associates. So that's when I knew the firm was never going to be properly managed. That's when I decided I wanted to leave. However, I had some apprehension because it was a steady paycheck and I was worried about starting on my own. So I probably would have continued to procrastinate, but then Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. And that's when the managerial cluelessness was even starker because the firm had no disaster recovery plan, so everything just stopped working. New Orleans was under a mandatory evacuation order for 6 weeks, and so everyone had to disperse to other cities, and most of the folks in New Orleans wound up in Houston. We'd huddle in this conference room and try to figure out how we were going to return to normal. So step one was, okay, let's send out bills so we could at least collect some money, right? But the servers that we needed to pull data from to do this were back in New Orleans, and we had no backup to work from. We couldn't access our word processing documents because those were also back on the servers in New Orleans. And, when I say we couldn't access, I mean I could access my documents because I had everything on my laptop. All my files, everything I needed, I was paperless. My email and my website were up and running. I had started running a weblog. And all that was up and running. The firm's email and website was down. So the firm wound up relying on my website, my email to communicate with the outside world. And suddenly they were eager for advice on how to use technology. And, I helped as much as I could. But the whole time I felt like I was the little pig who built a house of brick surrounded by people who insisted on building out of straw. So that's when I knew it was time to leave the firm. 3 months after Katrina, I walked out of the firm. I walked out on a Friday, had a nice party, but at the end of the day, I just took my laptop and walked out. And on that laptop were all my client files, all my form documents. I had all the information and documents that I needed to run a solo law practice. So the question then was, would the corporate clients be willing to trust me to do the same work that I'd been doing, but now as a solo lawyer? And the answer was yes. Most of my clients came with me. They didn't care if I was solo. They didn't care if I worked from home. All they cared about was if I could do the work that needed to be done and do it cost effectively. And then I started getting new clients because I had this low-cost website, and also because other lawyers in small firms started referring me business because a lot of people are aware of how inefficient and overhead-intensive large firms were. So I was surprised by that and delighted, and that was great. Then when I would go into court against these inefficient lawyers, I would exploit their inefficiencies to gain tactical advantages by keeping my costs down so my clients weren't pressured to settle. But then if we did go to trial, I was more efficient, and judges like efficiency, right? They hated the inefficiency of my adversary, so I discovered I had a huge advantage whenever I went up against arrogant counsel who believe that their mere size gives them an insurmountable advantage. So every time I went to trial, I was more aware of this stark reality, like the reality that if you're clueless, arrogant, and lumbering and change resistant, and you're in a big firm, that's not good. So it all worked well for me, and I was able to create a law firm that I enjoyed, that was very efficient. I could work as much as I wanted to, make as much money as I wanted to, and I didn't have all this ridiculous overhead and mindless bureaucracy. And then after a while, people started to realize like I was doing this, and they became super interested in my practice. The ABA asked me to write some books about using technology in a law practice. I was asked to appear in various legal podcasts. The ABA invited me to speak at their annual tech show conference in Chicago. They featured me in their monthly publication, mostly because they were interested in telling the story about Katrina and how that caused me to pivot into a solo practice. And because of all this publicity, I started getting invited to speak at smaller events around the country, by state and local bar associations. And then my alma mater, Loyola Law School, asked me to teach a class on practical lawyering. Hundreds of lawyers took it over the years. So all this time I was learning more and more about how to explain how to use technology and be efficient. And then as a result of all this attention, I started getting hired by lawyers, some of them in medium-sized practices, but mostly solo and small firm lawyers, who wanted guidance, like, show us how to use technology to better manage and market our practices. And I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed helping lawyers in small firm practices, particularly. I did not really enjoy the ones in large firms. And I enjoyed this because, unlike lawyers in big firms, they weren't averse to adopting new ways of getting things done more easily, even if it involved technology, and they could jump on it really quickly. They didn't have to have a committee meeting and debate it for a year before they did it. So I felt a strong kinship with those folks. I was super eager to help them figure out how to connect the dots. And then eventually I went all in on teaching and transitioned away from a full-time practice. And that's what I've been doing for the past 10 years, is helping lawyers around the US and even in some foreign countries like the UK and Australia. So that is my story in a nutshell. And now let's talk about how you can transform your law practice. And basically the process for doing this is, 10-step roadmap, which is what I'm going to talk about now. And so the keys here, the big three are, how you approach things, the operations, and then marketing. So let's just kind of drill into these. So the key with the approach is you need to be strategic and structured about how you grow your firm, right? As opposed to being loosey-goosey or improvising based on your gut feel, right? Like this is the opposite of what the folks in my big firm did. They're just like, oh, well, we'll just do whatever used to work. So, you want to be thoughtful because, you're trying to build a brick house versus a straw house, right? So a lot of this involves the mindset, right? You need to have several different kinds of mindsets that are important. Like one is an investment mindset. Namely, you accept the idea that spending money is worth it if it helps you make more money or if it helps you get stuff done faster and better and easier. Also, learning new ways of doing things is worth it if it makes your life easier and in turn makes your firm run smoother. And sometimes, taking one or two steps backwards to achieve several steps forward is worth it, right? And spending the time to set up systems, learn new software is a way of taking a few steps back, but it creates powerful outcomes. So you have to be willing to invest time, money, and energy. You also need to have a growth mindset, which is the belief that you can do things or can learn to do them, as opposed to believing that your abilities are fixed or immutable. And there's some great books about this. There's one by a woman named Carol Dweck, who's a Stanford psychologist, and she talks about this, how this is how you grow things and you're more successful, is because some people think that what they can do is fixed at birth, that they have a talent or they don't. Like in my case, I believed I wasn't good at marketing, so I didn't try to learn marketing because I didn't know that one could learn it. Later on, I learned that you could, and I was like, oh, wow, I could have learned this a lot sooner, or a lot better if I just realized. So you can't limit your capabilities by what you believe, and so you are absolutely capable of doing all the things you need to do to grow your law firm, trust me. And if you believe you're not, then it's because you have a fixed mindset as opposed to a growth mindset. You also have to have a focused mindset, which is realizing that there are a vital few things out there that have a disproportionate impact either in your favor or against you. So it's not like if I put in 10% effort, I'm always going to get 10% benefit. You're going to get massive benefits from some things, and you're going to get massive problems from some things. So you need to figure out what those things are and focus on the right things. So there's this thing called the 80-20 principle or Pareto's principle. And that's part of how you zero in on the idea that there are these things that you can work on in your business that will have a powerful impact. And, I'm not going to drill into all of it, but it's important to understand that this is part of the focus mindset. Then the last thing is you need a humility mindset, which is really the recognition that you can't do everything and you can't know everything that you need to, to do or know in order to run your practice at a high level. But there are people out there that can help you do this, right? There are people out there that can help you figure out which technology options are the best and which of those best options need to be harnessed sooner rather than later, right? Like, you don't need to understand everything about technology. You just need to find the people that can help you plug it in and get the most out of it. You don't need to figure out everything about marketing your practice on your own. You can figure out how to market your practice in powerful and cost-effective ways by finding the right people who can help you learn what you need to learn and then do what you need done. And I'll talk about that in the marketing part of this a little bit later. But those are key, right? Like, you have to have the right approach. If you don't have the right approach, you're going to fall apart and you're going to be building a straw house, and you don't want to do that. So the next thing is operations. That's the next big category. And here, you need to have good systems and processes. You need to constantly be making steady improvements across all areas of your practice, documenting some workflows, creating checklists, all that stuff that I talked about that Judge Duplanche did that helped him run his chambers. That's what lawyers who run their practices efficiently do. And there's a really great book by a lawyer named John Fisher from New York called The Power of a System. And you can find it on Amazon and get the Kindle version, or you can just Google The Power of a System by John Fisher, and you can find it. He gives it away for free now as a PDF. That book, I wish it had been around when I started my solo practice, but I've recommended it to lots of lawyers, and they've used it to great effect. They love it. I've invited John Fisher to speak on webinars. I even invited him to come to the live boot camp that we did back in 2017, and he's great. And he's just telling you the kind of obvious stuff about how to create a system. Now, he's a personal injury lawyer, so you kind of have to analogize some of his stuff to your practice if you're not a personal injury lawyer, but it gives you a window and an insight into how to set up systems for a law practice. Then the next thing is streamlining, and this really just means simplifying and creating efficiency wherever possible. Oftentimes that's going to involve using technology like automation and the cloud, but it can also mean using people that you hire either full-time or part-time. Now, the main thing about streamlining is really simplifying, right? Simplifying by reducing workflow steps, by reducing complexity wherever possible, which can happen by reducing the number of operational workflows you have, which can happen if you eliminate unprofitable or less profitable practice areas. It can also happen when you stop doing work for certain types of clients that take up more of your time. But basically, the more you simplify, the easier your life will be. And this is where I was really obsessive in my practice. So if you simplify, it'll make your practice easier to manage. Basically, it means like fewer moving parts equals, easier to practice, more enjoyable life. Now, my old firm, as I mentioned, was horrible at simplifying, as most law firms are, and really even smaller firms. Like I mentioned earlier about them not being willing to switch over to an online library. They had this flat rate, the all-you-can-use rate with Westlaw, and that covered 75% of the books they had in their big library in New Orleans. They could have freed up space. They could have used that space for office space and reduced the amount of money they paid for overhead. They could have saved money and simplified, but instead they chose to keep doing it the old way, the familiar way. Having attorneys enter their own time into the time and billing system was something that people were reluctant to do at the old firm, but they should have just ordered people to do it because it was simpler. It eliminated steps. Less things fell through the cracks, right? And eventually that's what lawyers wound up doing, but they didn't insist that lawyers do it because they weren't trying to simplify. So when I went solo, as I said, I obsessed about simplifying. Now, what does it mean to simplify when you're a solo or small firm lawyer? Well, it can mean taking the extra time to set things up so that they pay off in a big way, so that you are set up for a much higher level of efficiency. Like, for example, adopting paperless lawyering, right, which you'll have to do over time, but it's worth the effort because over time, you're going to get rid of complexity and going to simplify. Using cloud document storage for the documents that you've scanned into your paperless system is going to allow you to work from anywhere, allow you to copy those files and back them up faster and easier. All of that's going to simplify your life. But it can also be taking the time to set up uniform document templates with your letterhead, with the captions you tend to use, or taking the time to learn to use your word processing software so that you use the styles function in there. If it's Word or WordPerfect, they both have styles function. And I know that most lawyers don't set that up, don't use it. or their staff doesn't use it as well as they can. So that's all part of simplifying. Or anything involving automation, all that stuff is simplifying. So the thing is, you don't always have to use your time to set these things up. You can pay people to do them for you if it involves technology or involves setting up document templates. There are people you can hire to do this for you. Now, simplifying can also mean being willing to pay for things you haven't ever paid for before. So when I went out on my own, I could have just gone to the post office and gotten stamps, or I could have gotten an expensive postal meter. But I looked at it and I said, wait a second, I got a printer. I can print envelopes and I can print postage onto the envelopes, print stickers that I can slap on envelopes like FedEx envelopes or whatever. I can do this all from my computer, and there are services out there. Stamps.com is one. I was using a Mac. I used this thing called Indicia, and it cost me $15 a month just to be able to use it when I wanted to, which I was like, well, I could, I could pay for this and simplify my life, or I could not pay and then have to run to the post office, which I don't know what it's like in your area, but that's, a model of inefficiency and bureaucracy. So I made my life simpler by paying for it. You can use cloud-based accounting software. That's what I did, because I realized that trying to run the software off of my computer and then have to send all the files to my accountant to print them out was a big pain. So I just went online and then hired an accountant and bookkeeper who could just tap into my system and do what they needed to do. That simplified my life. Answering your own phone is not a good idea. Paying somebody to do it or trying to automate your answering system, that doesn't make sense. Hire a receptionist service. They're really good at this. They're going to make you look better. It's going to be good for your marketing. Yes, it costs a little bit more money, but it's going to simplify your life and help in this powerful way, right? So, simplifying can even involve like little things like keyboard shortcuts, learning to use keyboard shortcuts, or putting, something in your engagement letter telling your clients that you're going to be paperless, and that if they sign off on this, at the end of the case, you're going to shred all the paper or give them a chance to pick it up, but you're not keeping it. Those are little things, but they pay off in a big way. So those are all examples. Then there are other things like making tough choices, right? And you have to be intentional and assertive and sometimes even ruthless about eliminating things that are not among the vital few things that are really good. Like you want to eliminate the vital few that cause problems. So that's bad clients, for example. So they're not worth it. You just need to get rid of them. And if you market well, you won't have to worry about getting good clients to replace them with. And we'll talk about that. All right. So the last component here is the people component. And here is where you need to adopt the mindset of, instead of always asking, well, how can I do this? Or how can this be done? Start with the question like, who can do this? Who's the best person to do this? It may be somebody that works for you already, or it may be somebody that you could hire on a part-time basis. It may be somebody that you could outsource. But the key here is you should only be doing lawyer work. And you should only be doing the kind of lawyer work that is at the highest level of you adding value for your clients, right? And that you enjoy. So work should be delegated down to an appropriate skill level to save you time, to save you frustration, and to save your clients money. If you insist on doing low-level work, because this is something that solo lawyers tend to do, I know because I did it, then you're going to be stuck working in your business like a slave, right? You're going to be essentially an employee in your business. But if you learn how to delegate out these lower-level tasks, you can get to the point where you can work on your business like a business owner, and you can take more time off, right? Now, you can only get so far with systems, streamlining, and automation, so you need to learn how to leverage and learn to commit to leveraging people power, right? So you can use outsourcing if you need to, because there's all kinds of people around the world now that you can quickly and easily get to, but you do have to do it strategically. You do have to be realistic, and you probably need to be pretty adept at using cloud-based tools, and you have to have virtual collaboration skills, which are not hard to acquire. Basically, if you can log into somewhere online, you can do this, right? Now, the easiest things to outsource are things that are part-time, specialized, high-level tasks that you pay for on a subscription basis. So, for example, receptionist services, bookkeeping, those are examples of ones that you can pay for on a subscription basis, and they're cost effective because there are people out there that can deliver this on a cost effective basis, remotely. You should also learn how to leverage outsourcing that helps you with on-demand tasks. So there's a service called Law Clerk Legal, which is one that you should investigate and figure out how to make work for you, because it's basically a place where you can go find lawyers to write research memos, to draft pleadings, draft contracts, do document review, basically anything that you need a lawyer to do work for you to do. You don't have to hire a full-time associate. You can go to Law Clerk Legal, hire somebody there, And then over time, if you find somebody that you like working with all the time, you can always go back to that person. But you can use them as you need them. And if you're charging your clients for your costs for this kind of stuff, you can pass that cost along. So those are all things that you can do to improve your operations. Now let's talk about marketing. So lawyers have widely differing views of marketing. Some pay a lot of attention to this, but most don't, or they pay attention to the wrong things. And by the way, just because a lot of lawyers are all doing the same thing, it does not mean that it is correct or optimal. So you need to know that. And so yes, you need nice business cards, and maybe you also need a website, but what you really need is a marketing strategy, because marketing effectively is about doing a lot of little different things or some big things, and that they're all part of a unified strategy. Now, some lawyers are so desperate for clients that they wind up getting taken advantage of and paying a lot of money to do things that don't work well or that only attract mediocre clients. So my admonition here is don't act foolish and you won't get fooled and taken advantage of. Spending money on marketing when you don't truly or fully understand proper marketing principles and strategies is pretty much a guarantee of poor results and excessive spending or even needless spending, right? So step one, if you need more work, is you need to be better at referral marketing. You need to leverage referral marketing, but not in a haphazard way. You need to be intentional and strategic, because unless you understand proper marketing, you have trouble. But referral marketing is easy to understand. So it's built off the trust that you already have out there. People already know you, they like you, they trust you. You just need to be intentional about reminding them regularly that you appreciate the referrals and what kind of work that you most want to do. And if you're good with that, then you're going to get some folks referring clients to you. Now, the only thing about this is it has limits. And that is, you can't use referral marketing to attract prospective clients that don't know you, right? That referral marketing works because there are people out there that already trust you. So if somebody doesn't know you, or to enhance the fact that they don't know you, you need to do something more. And this is where people start paying for advertising. But the problem with advertising is it doesn't build rapport or establish trust with quote unquote cold leads. Now, if you've never heard the term cold leads, or if you've heard of it and you think it doesn't apply to lawyers, you don't like it, then let me just tell you, you're not ready to spend any money on ads, because that's what ads are. You're getting cold leads, right? Ads are geared toward cold leads, and that's why ads are expensive, and that's why they're hard to make them work well, because they don't do anything to build up trust with strangers. So if you want to build up trust with strangers, then you need to understand something called direct marketing. And you need to understand direct marketing principles, which is the only kind of marketing that David Ogilvy, the so-called father of advertising, used was direct response marketing. It's how he built his agency. He called it a secret weapon. If you don't know who David Ogilvy is, that's okay. But if you don't know anything about any of this stuff, then you need to know at least something. You don't need to know everything about marketing, but you do need to know enough to hire the right people and to do the right things. And if you don't, you're going to get taken advantage of. Trust me, this is what I see with lawyers all the time. So that is the overview of this 10-step process. That's, the steps you need to take to transform your practice. And obviously it's an overview, so you need to dig in and address each of these things. And obviously this takes time and ongoing effort, and you need to stay focused like I talked about earlier, and you need to maintain the right mindset so you stay on track, don't get disillusioned, don't think there are things you can't do. But the first part is just understanding the dots that you need to connect, which are these dots right here that I've just explained. And I have a PDF that outlines these elements like you see here, but with slightly more detail, and I'll send you that outline if you'd like, because the outline will help remind you what you need to focus on at the overall level. Now, I know from working with all those attorneys that I've helped that you'll probably need help executing those steps, and you'll need more guidance than I've given you here. And so if you want my help, I'm ready to give it to you. And I can tell you that the next best step to take is my Law Firm Autopilot course. So this is the course that I created based on all the information I gathered from helping the students in that law school class, with helping the lawyers that I gave talks to who hired me. I just sat down and thought about what are the key components here that pretty much everyone needs to know. And I put it in a course so that people could have access to it if they couldn't come to my boot camps and things like that. So that's how I created the course. And it's been around for now a couple of years. Hundreds of lawyers have taken it. They have all appreciated it. It's done really great, and it's helped a lot of them. Now, A quick tour of the course is basically, you go to lawfirmautopilot.com and you can, find out about it there under the courses. But just to kind of give you an introduction, it's an online course. It has, if you log into it on the computer, there's an area on the left where the modules are all grouped together, and then the lessons are grouped under each module. I think there's about 60 lessons in there. Some of them are videos. There's a course book that you get early on. It's 92 pages. It's a PDF document that's bookmarked, so you can learn, kind of the basics by reading through it and seeing, getting more detail there. And then there's a course syllabus that is, supplied in the very beginning. It's 2 parts, 2 pages, and it kind of shows you all the different elements grouped together. This syllabus does not include the resources that I'll talk about in a second, but, basically it's video lessons, it's templates, it's checklists, and it's everything you need to kind of get the more detail that you need. Now this is kind of scrolling through it. Under the modules, there's systems, there's stuff about getting assistance, there's stuff about marketing, there's lessons about streamlining, about automation, about outsourcing, and then there's this huge resource library of checklists, templates, short guides, workbooks, all that kind of stuff. There's a sample firm engagement letter. There are templates that you can use to create standard templates for pleadings and things like that. All that stuff is in there, right? And the regular price for this course is $495. That's if you go to lawfirmautopilot.com and wend your way to where it's for sale, you will see that it's for sale for $495. I want to reward you for paying attention and coming on to this webinar and learning about all this stuff. And the first thing that you need to know about is, okay, so first off, the course has helped lots of lawyers, as I mentioned, but it's not perfect for everyone, okay? You have to have the right mindset. You have to be realistic. The course is not a magic wand, but I'm 100% confident that if you're still here listening, that you have the right mindset, right? Now, maybe you still have some doubt about whether the course is right for you. So to help you resolve those small doubts, I can take away the risk by offering you a 30-day, no questions asked, full money-back guarantee. So that way you can plunge into the course right away, spend 30 days checking it out, and if you like it, you keep it. If you don't like it, let us know in that 30-day window, and we'll give you all of your money back. We don't even ask any questions. So if you want to take advantage of that, you can do that simply by checking the email that I'm going to send you in a little bit. And when you check the email, there will be a link for downloading that resource I mentioned earlier, but there will also be a link that will say, click here to go get the special offer. You can go over that page and register. And then after you register, you just wait for an email. Actually, you'll get 2 emails. One that will say, here's your invoice. And then after you get the invoice one, you'll get another email that will say, click here, and you can set up your credentials to log in to access the information. So it'll take 2 to 3, maybe 5 minutes, depends on the speed of the internet and stuff like that, but no more than 5 minutes for you to get access. So that's it. Thanks again for joining me today for this overview of how you can create a better law practice where you work smarter rather than harder. And I hope that you take advantage of that special offer so that I can continue to help you grow your practice and make it the best that it can possibly be.